The docking clamps locked with a deep echo that shook through the hull of the human ship Endurance. Lieutenant Daniel Cross stood near the airlock, watching as the steel doors opened to reveal the massive trade station above Karun Prime. He had traveled across half the galaxy, served on different worlds and faced many kinds of danger, but this place still left him breathless. The station was alive. Lights and colors his homeworld had no name for ran across the ceiling like living rivers. Voices of hundreds of species mixed together in a hum so thick it was almost music. Some beings glided without legs, some crawled, some buzzed with wings. Daniel had seen diversity before, but here it was overwhelming. A great meeting place where the galaxy's strangers became neighbors for a brief time. He adjusted his uniform and stepped forward. He had no orders today, no battles to fight, only shore leave. The thought felt strange. He had spent so many months with his rifle slung across his chest that walking with empty hands made him uneasy. Still, he tried to let himself breathe. He passed a vendor with scales like polished stone, selling glowing fruits that floated in the air. A group of feathered traders laughed loudly, their laughter sounding like bells dropped in water. Daniel smiled faintly at the sight. He was a guest here, nothing more, nothing less. Then he saw her. At first he thought she was another trick of the strange station lights. She stood at the edge of the crowd, tall and still as if the chaos of the marketplace bent around her. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, soft and glowing under the neon haze. Her hair fell past her shoulders in threads that looked spun from starlight itself. Her eyes, when they lifted and met the light, were deep pools of molten metal, beautiful yet unreadable. For a moment, Daniel forgot to move. He had seen aliens before, plenty of them, but there was something different here. Others walked around her with careful distance, almost fear, like she carried a storm within her. She held herself as if wrapped in invisible armor, posture straight, hands folded tight against her chest, head slightly lowered but never in weakness, more in warning. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Daniel's heart gave a small, nervous thud. He wasn't the kind of man who threw compliments around. On Earth, back in his younger days, he had been shy, awkward with words. Military life had sharpened him, but it had not changed that part. And yet, as he looked at her, some instinct deeper than habit pulled at him. Still, he hesitated. What was she? What was her story? Why did others give her such distance? He took a careful step closer, not enough to intrude, but enough to see her more clearly. She was scanning the market stalls with quiet eyes, but not touching, not speaking. When a merchant greeted her with a wave, she gave a nod so cold that the merchant quickly looked away. Daniel noticed something else then. Behind the shimmer of her silver skin and shining hair, there was tension in her face. Her lips pressed tightly, her jaw clenched. She was not calm, she was enduring, like a soldier standing in a hostile land. And suddenly, Daniel recognized that feeling. He knew what it was to be surrounded by noise and still feel alone. He knew what it was to stand tall because sitting down would mean collapse. In her stillness, he saw himself. The thought startled him. This stranger, this alien woman was nothing like him in form or culture. Yet in one silent glance, he felt a bridge between them. A group of insectoid traders passed by, chattering in cliques. The silver woman shifted slightly, her shoulders stiff as though the sound pierced her ears. For the briefest second, her eyes closed and Daniel caught it. A flicker of exhaustion, of pain carefully hidden. Then she opened them again, calm mask restored. Daniel's chest tightened. Most people would have looked away, would have respected the unspoken barrier around her. But Daniel Cross was human. And humans, for all their flaws, had a habit of reaching across lines they weren't supposed to cross. He did not plan it. He did not think. He only felt the weight of silence pressing on her like chains. And so before his fear could rise, before his training told him to stay quiet, he took a breath and whispered the word that rose naturally to his lips. "You're beautiful." The word slipped into the air like a fragile spark, small, soft, but enough to change everything. The word hung in the air like a fragile flame. Beautiful. For Daniel, it had slipped out without planning, without thought. He did not speak it as a soldier or as a stranger seeking attention. He spoke it the way one whispers at the sight of a sunrise, or when the ocean catches the light and makes the world feel new. It was not a word of desire but of reverence. But for her, the alien woman wrapped in silver light, the word was a thunderclap. She froze. The air around her seemed to still. The faint shimmer of her skin darkened. as though storm clouds rolled beneath her surface. Her silver eyes widened, and in them was not delight but shock. Sharp, painful shock. You. Her voice trembled as she spoke, low and strange, like wind through broken glass. You dare call me that? Daniel's breath caught. Around them, the crowd shifted uneasily. A reptilian merchant glanced over and quickly looked away, muttering something in its own tongue. A pair of tall avian travelers lowered their voices, watching with cautious curiosity. The marketplace seemed to sense the tension, and even the glowing fruits in the nearby stall seemed dimmer. Daniel raised his hands slowly, palms open, the universal sign of peace. I meant no insult, I swear. Among my people it is the highest praise. Her gaze cut into him like a blade. Praise? She whispered as if the word itself were poison. He swallowed hard. Every instinct told him to retreat, to apologize and vanish into the crowd. But something stronger kept him rooted in place. That same instinct that had pulled the compliment from his lips told him not to run. Humans had a stubbornness, sometimes foolish, sometimes brave, that refused to let silence win. He steadied his voice. Where I come from, when we call someone beautiful, it means they carry something rare, something that touches the heart. It is never insult. Her lips trembled, then pressed tight, as if holding back words too dangerous to release. Her hands, folded against her chest, slowly uncurled, revealing long fingers trembling like leaves in the wind. You do not understand, she said. Her voice was sharper now, a whisper edged with steel. On my world, that word is not gift. It is curse. To be called beautiful is to be marked. Daniel blinked, confusion mixing with sorrow. Marked for what? Her eyes, molten and fierce, met his. For chains. The single word struck him harder than a gunshot. He felt it in his chest, heavy and sickening. Chains. He saw it then, not just in her words, but in the stiffness of her shoulders, the careful way she carried herself, the distance others gave her. She was not feared for power alone. She carried the weight of history in her very skin. A silence grew between them, deep and uncomfortable. Daniel could feel his pulse in his throat, feel the watching eyes of half the market pressing on him. He wanted to explain again, to reassure her, to take back the hurt his words had caused, but he knew too much speaking might only sharpen the wound. So instead, he softened his voice, almost gentle enough to be lost in the noise. I'm sorry. I didn't know. For the first time, her anger seemed to falter. Not disappear, never that, but flicker, like a flame shaken by breath. She tilted her head slightly, studying him as though trying to measure the truth in his eyes. You speak with no demand, she said at last. Her voice was quieter, less sharp. No price in your tone, that is. Strange. Daniel managed a small, nervous smile. Humans can be strange. Something unreadable crossed her face, something between suspicion and a fragile curiosity. She looked away quickly, as though afraid of being seen too long in that state. Her silver hair shifted with the movement, catching the neon lights like falling stars. Daniel didn't press further. He knew the moment was delicate, like glass balanced on the edge of a table. But he also knew this. His word, his compliment, had not been forgotten. It had struck something deep within her, something hidden, something painful. And though her first response was shock, he sensed it would not end there. As she turned and began to walk away, the crowd parted for her as always. Yet Daniel noticed something subtle, something no one else seemed to see. Her hands no longer pressed tightly against her chest. They hung loose at her sides, trembling still but free. And Daniel, standing alone in the noise of the station, felt his own heart trembling too. He had touched something forbidden, something sacred, and he did not yet know whether it would bring connection or ruin. But he knew this. The story was only beginning. The crowd's noise returned slowly like a tide after a storm. Daniel stood still, replaying her words in his mind. To be called beautiful is to be marked. For chains. It echoed inside him, heavy as iron. He had given what he thought was a gift, yet in her world it was a curse. He watched her silver figure move through the market, people stepping aside to give her space. No one dared touch her. No one dared speak. She was like a flame everyone feared to burn themselves on. But Daniel could not move. Something deep inside urged him. Don't let her go. His boots carried him forward before his mind had decided. He followed at a distance, careful not to appear as a threat. She walked with long, graceful strides, but there was tension in each step, as though every movement was measured. Finally, she stopped near a quiet corridor that led away from the market noise. The lights here were dimmer, softer, and the hum of voices faded into silence. She turned sharply, sensing him behind her. Her eyes locked on him like twin blades of silver fire. "Why do you follow?" she demanded. Her voice was calm, but Daniel could hear the storm underneath. Daniel straightened, holding her gaze. "Because I need to explain. I didn't mean harm. I didn't mean chains. I swear it." Her lips curled in something between anger and disbelief. "Explain? Do you think your words can rewrite centuries of scars? Do you think your tone can erase the screams of those taken for their faces?" The force of her words hit Daniel like a blast of cold air. He opened his mouth, then closed it, struggling for the right reply. Finally, he said quietly, "No, I can't erase them. I wouldn't even try. But I can tell you the truth about what I meant. And maybe it will matter." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Her body trembled slightly, though her posture stayed rigid. At last she whispered, almost as if against her will, "Say it then. Speak your truth." Daniel took a slow breath, steadying himself. "On my world, beauty doesn't mean ownership. It doesn't mean chains. It means something that moves us, something that reminds us life is worth living. When I said it to you, it wasn't to claim you. It was to thank you for existing as you are." Her eyes flickered as though something fragile cracked inside. But then the walls came back up, swift and hard. She stepped closer, her height towering over him, her presence almost overwhelming. "You dare speak so lightly? Do you not know who I am?" Daniel held his ground. Fear prickled at his skin, but he refused to back away. "No, I don't know who you are. I only know what I saw. And what I saw was someone standing alone, carrying weight no one else seemed willing to see." Her breath caught. Just for a second, her silver mask faltered. Her hands, always so controlled, twitched at her sides. She looked at him not with rage, but with something else, something raw. She whispered. "You see too much." Daniel shook his head gently. "No, I see just enough." Her eyes glistened, and for the first time since he had met her, they looked less like molten metal and more like water ready to spill. She turned quickly, as though hiding the crack in her armor, and pressed her hand against the cold wall. For several long seconds she said nothing. Daniel stood behind her, giving her space but not leaving. The silence grew heavy, filled with the unspoken weight of both their worlds. Finally her voice came, quiet but filled with pain. "When you called me that word, for a moment I felt something I have never allowed myself to feel, and it terrified me." Daniel's chest tightened. "What did you feel?" Her hand curled into a fist against the wall. She did not look back at him when she whispered, "Hope." The word struck him harder than any blade could. His breath caught, and suddenly the world around them seemed smaller, quieter, more fragile. Hope. She had lived without it for so long that even the faintest taste of it was terrifying. Daniel didn't move closer, didn't reach out. He knew touch might shatter the delicate moment. Instead, he let his voice carry what his hands could not. Hope is not a curse. It's a beginning. For the first time, she turned her head slightly, enough for him to see the shine of a tear sliding down her silver cheek. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Daniel knew then that his words had broken through her walls. Not completely, not enough to heal centuries of scars, but enough to plant a seed. And he knew seeds, once planted, had a way of growing even in the hardest soil. The shock of his compliment had not ended in anger. It had opened a door. And behind that door was something neither of them had expected. The corridor was quiet except for the low hum of the station's engines. Daniel stood a few steps away, watching the alien woman's shoulders rise and fall with slow, heavy breaths. She had turned partly away from him, as if hiding the storm inside her chest. For a long moment there was only silence. Daniel thought she would leave, that she would walk deeper into the shadows and vanish. But instead her voice came low and trembling. "You want the truth, human," she whispered. "Then listen, and do not speak until I am finished." Daniel nodded once. He did not dare interrupt. She pressed her palm harder against the wall as if steadying herself. Her silver hair shifted with the faint vibration of the station. "Long ago my people were not like this. We were not silent. We were not cold. We lived free and we spoke of beauty as you do. It was a time of innocence. A dangerous time. Her eyes lowered, and Daniel saw a shadow pass across her face. Then came the outsiders. They saw us not as people, but as ornaments. To them, our silver skin and shining hair were treasures to be owned. They began to hunt us, not for our strength, not for our knowledge, but for our appearance. Daniel's stomach twisted. He wanted to speak, to curse those who had done it, but he remembered her warning and stayed silent. They chained us, she continued, voice sharp with old pain. They marked the ones they called most beautiful. Those chosen were taken from their homes, stripped of their names, displayed like jewels. My ancestors learned that beauty was not gift. It was death wearing a smile. Her hand trembled against the wall, and for the first time her posture bent slightly, like the weight of memory was too much. Generations passed. The chains broke, yes, but the scars did not. We began to fear our own reflection. To call someone beautiful was to curse them, to remind them of the darkness that once swallowed us. We buried the word. We made it forbidden. She turned then, at last, facing him fully. Her silver eyes glistened with unshed tears, fierce and vulnerable all at once. So now you understand. When you looked at me, when you spoke that word, it was not kindness I heard. It was history. It was pain. Do you see why your compliment struck like a blade? Daniel's throat felt tight. He had faced enemies on battlefields, but nothing cut deeper than the sorrow in her voice. He wanted to say 1,000 things, that her people deserved healing, that her beauty was more than chains, that she was more than her scars. But he stayed still, knowing she had more to give. Her voice softened then, almost breaking. All my life I have carried silence. Others step aside when I walk. They look, but they never speak. They fear me or they pity me, but none dare use that word. None dare touch the wound, until you. Daniel drew a slow breath. His chest ached with the weight of her confession. I didn't know, he said quietly, gently. I couldn't have known. I know, she whispered. And yet, your ignorance frightens me less than your honesty. You said the word without chains, without demand. That is new to me. Her hand finally dropped from the wall and she stood straighter, though her eyes still shimmered with unfallen tears. For the first time since they had met, her voice carried not just pain, but something fragile beneath it. Perhaps your kind sees beauty differently. Perhaps that is why your words confuse me so. Daniel took a cautious step closer, careful not to break the fragile moment. His voice was steady, though inside his heart pounded. Yes, to us, beauty isn't about ownership. It's about gratitude. When I said it to you, I wasn't marking you. I was thanking you for existing as you are. Her lips parted slightly as if she had no reply prepared. She searched his face as though looking for deception, for the trap she had always been taught to expect. But all she found was sincerity. And in that silence, a single tear escaped her eye and slid down her silver cheek. She didn't brush it away. For the first time, she let herself be seen. Daniel did not move closer, did not speak again. He simply stood with her in the quiet, sharing the weight of her truth. And in that fragile space, he understood. This was not just about a word. This was about breaking chains that had lived in her people's hearts for centuries. And maybe, just maybe, his one small word could be the beginning of something greater. The silence between them was heavy but not empty. It was the kind of silence that carried meaning, the kind that pressed against the heart until words had to be spoken. Daniel stood still, his hands at his sides, his mind struggling to find the right way forward. He knew this was not just about one compliment. It was about history, scars, and chains that stretched back centuries. Slowly, carefully, Daniel spoke. His voice was quiet but steady. I hear your pain. I hear the weight of your past. And I swear, I never meant to place more chains on you. Where I come from, beauty is not something to fear. It's something we treasure. Not to keep, not to own, but to honor. When we call someone beautiful, we are not claiming them. We are thanking them for being a light in the dark. She stared at him, her silver eyes sharp, searching, doubtful. Light in the dark? She repeated softly, as if testing the words on her tongue. Daniel nodded. Yes, you see, humans, we live fragile lives. Our bodies break easily, our time is short. We spend so much of it fighting wars, struggling for food, trying not to lose ourselves. But even in the hardest times, we look for something that reminds us life is worth the struggle. Sunrise after a night of fear, the sound of laughter when hope feels lost, the face of someone who makes the world seem less cruel. His throat tightened, but he pressed on. That is what beauty means to us. Not chains, not doom, but proof that the universe can still surprise us with something good. The alien woman's lips parted slightly. She said nothing, but her eyes softened just a little, as if the fire in them flickered into curiosity. Daniel drew in a slow breath. When I saw you in the market standing tall while everyone gave you distance, I didn't see a curse. I saw strength. I saw someone who carried her pain without letting it break her. And it moved me. That is why I called you beautiful, not because of your silver skin, not because of your starlight hair, but because you reminded me of something humans sometimes forget, that even in silence, even in suffering, there can still be grace. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Grace, she whispered, her voice fragile now as though unused to such gentleness. Daniel gave a small nod. Yes, grace. The kind that can't be chained no matter how many scars the past left behind. For a moment she looked away as if afraid to let him see the emotion rising inside her. The shimmer of her skin wavered faintly, no longer cold silver but softer like moonlight through mist. Her eyes closed and Daniel could almost feel the war inside her. The part of her that had been trained to fear the word, and the part of her that wanted desperately to believe his meaning. Finally she spoke, her voice low. You speak as if words carry power. They do, Daniel said simply. They always have. On Earth, words have started wars, and ended them. They've broken hearts, and healed them. A single word can destroy, but it can also save. That's why I will not take mine back. I called you beautiful because I saw the truth in you, and I will not call it anything else. Her eyes opened again, wet with unshed tears. She studied him with intensity, as if waiting for a crack in his resolve. A hint of insincerity, but all she found was steady honesty. And then, so softly it was almost a breath, she asked, Do you believe beauty can be more than chains? Do you believe it can be freedom? Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He stepped one pace closer, not enough to invade her space, but enough to let her see the conviction in his face. Yes, I believe beauty is freedom, because it reminds us that we are more than our scars, more than our past. It reminds us we're alive. The words hung between them, heavy, fragile, powerful. For the first time, her posture eased. The stiffness in her shoulders softened. Her hands no longer trembled. She was still, but not from fear. Rather from something unfamiliar, something she had long denied herself. Hope. She lowered her gaze, a tear slipping down her silver cheek. But when she looked back at him, her eyes no longer burned with anger. They glowed softly, uncertain but open. You may be dangerous, human. For you plant seeds where others see only ash. Daniel gave a faint smile, his own eyes wet now, then let them grow. And in that quiet corridor far from the crowd, something shifted. Not chains breaking all at once, not wounds healed in a moment, but the beginning of a new meaning. A new way to hold a word that had been forbidden for generations. A human's response had lit a small fire. And for the first time, she did not try to put it out. The corridor had grown quiet, the distant hum of the station fading into the background. Neither of them spoke for several moments. The air between them felt heavy, not with anger now, but with something far more delicate, like a fragile thread that could snap with the wrong touch. She stood tall, her silver form gleaming under the dim lights, but her expression was no longer a mask of steel. The shimmer of her skin flickered softly, as if her body itself betrayed the storm inside. Her eyes, those deep molten pools, wavered with conflict. Daniel didn't move closer. He had learned enough to know that pressing too hard might break the fragile bridge forming between them. He simply stood there steady, waiting. Humans had a gift for silence when it mattered, though they were often loud and restless. They also knew how to hold still when hearts were speaking louder than voices. Finally, she drew a sharp breath and let it out slowly. You speak of freedom as if it is simple, she said, her tone quieter than before. But you do not carry what I carry. You do not know the weight of generations. Every step I take, every glance I receive, it is reminder of what we lost. To hope feels like betrayal to those who suffered before me. Her words struck Daniel deeply. He thought of Earth's own history, the wars, the slavery, the cruelty his people had inflicted upon one another. He thought of the stories of those who dared to believe in change, even when it seemed impossible. Slowly he shook his head. Hope isn't betrayal, he said softly. It's continuation. It's carrying the dreams of those who came before you. They suffered so you could stand here now. If you let the chains define you forever, then their pain was wasted. But if you let yourself hope just a little, you honor them. Her lips parted as though she wanted to argue, but no words came. Instead, her hands lifted slightly, trembling in the air as if she wanted to grasp something invisible.
"Hope feels dangerous," she whispered.
It feels like standing on the edge of a cliff, not knowing if there is ground below. Daniel's voice was calm, gentle. Maybe it is dangerous, but so is silence. So is living without it. Sometimes the most dangerous step is the only one worth taking. She lowered her hand slowly, her gaze dropping to the floor. Her silver hair fell forward, catching the dim light like broken strands of starlight. For a moment she seemed younger, less like the untouchable figure in the marketplace and more like someone lost, searching for a path she had been forbidden to walk. Daniel watched her carefully. He could see the shift happening inside her, subtle but real. It was like watching ice crack under the warmth of spring, slow, hesitant but inevitable. When she finally looked up again, there was something new in her eyes. Not certainty, not peace, but the fragile spark of something she had confessed earlier. Hope. It trembled there, uncertain yet refusing to die. "You speak like fire," she said at last. Her voice low but steady. "Fire burns. Fire destroys, yet it also warms. I do not know yet if you will burn me or give me warmth." Daniel gave a faint, gentle smile. "Maybe both. But I promise I will never chain you." Her chest rose and fell sharply, as though the weight of his words struck deeper than she wanted them to. She turned her face slightly, hiding the shimmer in her eyes, but not fast enough. Daniel saw the tear escape, sliding down her silver cheek like liquid crystal. She didn't wipe it away this time. She let it fall. The silence that followed was not heavy anymore. It was softer, like the quiet of dawn before the first bird sings. Daniel felt his own heart lighten, though he knew this was only the beginning. She was still cautious, still trapped between past and present, but the wall around her had cracked, and in that crack the light had begun to seep through. When she finally spoke again, her voice was almost a whisper. "Humans, you are dangerous because you see doors where others see walls. Perhaps that is your gift, or your curse." Daniel met her gaze, his own steady and kind. "Maybe. But if seeing doors means finding freedom, then I'll carry that curse gladly." She didn't reply, but she didn't turn away either. She simply stood there, letting the silence surround them both. And for the first time in her life, she allowed herself to stand without her mask, without her armor, without her silence as a shield. She stood as herself. It was a small step, but small steps, Daniel knew, could move mountains. The silence stretched between them, soft but alive. She stood tall, silver skin glowing faintly in the dim corridor, her starlight hair falling loose around her face. For the first time since he had seen her, she did not try to hide herself. She did not pull her hands tightly to her chest. She did not lower her head, she did not walk away. She simply stood unshielded. Daniel watched her carefully. He knew this moment was not victory, not yet. It was only a beginning, fragile and uncertain, but beginnings mattered. They were seeds that, with care, could grow into forests. Her eyes held his for a long time. There was still pain there, still caution, but also something else, something new. Slowly she drew in a deep breath and let it out. "You are unlike others," she said at last, her voice soft but steady. "No one has ever spoken to me this way. No one has ever dared." Daniel gave a small, quiet smile. "Sometimes humans dare too much. It gets us into trouble. But sometimes, it changes everything." Her lips curved, not into a smile, but into something close, a faint easing of the lines around her mouth, a softening of her guarded face. "You have planted a thought inside me, a dangerous thought. That may be the word I feared for so long. Does not have to mean chains. That maybe it can mean light." Daniel's chest tightened at her words. He nodded slowly. "Yes, it can mean light, and no one can take that meaning from you unless you let them." She fell silent again, her gaze drifting to the floor as if she was weighing centuries of history against a single moment. The battle inside her was clear in the tremble of her hands, the flicker of her silver glow. But when she looked back up, her eyes were no longer only heavy with sorrow. They carried a spark. Without another word, she turned and began to walk. Daniel followed at a distance, unsure if she wanted him near. They returned to the main market, where the noise of voices and the glow of colors rushed back around them. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the hall, and as always, they gave her space. But today, something was different. She no longer hid. Her hands did not clutch at her chest. Her head was not bowed. She walked with her starlight hair free, flowing like a banner behind her. The crowd stared, confused. Whispers followed, questioning, unsettled. And yet she did not shrink. Daniel felt a warmth in his chest as he watched. She was not smiling, but she was walking with a strength that was not armor. It was something deeper, something new. A choice to be seen, truly seen, without fear. When she reached the center of the hall, she stopped. The crowd grew quiet, uncertain as her silver eyes swept across them. For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly she raised her head higher as if daring them to look at her differently. And in that silence, Daniel saw it. The shift. Small, almost invisible, but real. A merchant who once turned away did not this time. A group of avians who once hushed their voices now watched with open curiosity. It was not acceptance yet, but it was change. She glanced back only once, her eyes meeting Daniel's across the space. And in that single glance he saw her unspoken words. "You gave me this. You gave me the choice to hope." Daniel's heart swelled. He did not need thanks. He did not need recognition. To see her walk unchained, even for a moment, was enough. She turned again and walked forward into the crowd, her silver form shining under the strange station lights. For the first time, she was not a silent shadow. She was a presence, a flame, and Daniel knew that word, beautiful, would no longer be a curse among her people. It would take time, years maybe, but seeds had a way of spreading. One human's reckless, honest word had cracked open a door to freedom. As he stood in the market watching her disappear into the throng, Daniel smiled faintly to himself. Humans were known for their weapons, their wars, their stubbornness, but sometimes their greatest power was something far simpler. A word spoken with honesty, a word that could change a life, and perhaps even a world.